This presentation will set out what proof of origin and supporting documentations are needed to claim preference under the terms of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU. Businesses will be required to comply with full customs controls from the 1st of January 2022 and must produce supporting documentation on proof of origin if requested by the customs officials. We'll now briefly outline what rules of origin are and how supplier declarations fit into the requirements.
So, what are rules of origin? Well, rules of origin determine the economic nationality of a good, meaning where that product has been manufactured, taking into account the processing and where its inputs come from. To access preferential, which is lower or zero tariffs, in a free trade agreement, you must comply with the rules of origin to prove your good originates in the exporting country. Rules of origin are a standard part of free trade agreements, although the specific requirements do differ between each agreement. We'll now go through how to claim preferential tariffs on goods moving into the UK.
So, to access preferential tariffs when importing into the UK, you will need to claim preference as part of your customs declaration. To do this, you need to provide proof of origin. Under the TCA, there are two options to provide proof of origin. The first is a statement of origin completed by the exporter on a commercial document. So for example, this could be on a bill of material or an invoice. The second option is to use importer's knowledge, which is knowledge obtained by the importer that the goods are originating. To use importer's knowledge, you will need to obtain sufficient evidence that the goods meet the TCA rules of origin. This may involve the exporter providing a range of supporting documentation. Where this option is used, the exporter does not need to provide a statement on origin, though the importer may ask the exporter to provide information about the goods to support their preference claim.
An exporter who has made out a statement on origin must keep, for 4 years from the date it was made out, a copy of the statement on origin and all other records showing that the product satisfies the requirements to meet the rule of origin. For example, a bill of materials or invoices. In both cases, these records can be stored in an electronic format. An importer making a claim for preferential tariff treatment must also keep the statement on origin made out by the exporter for 4 years from the date of import. Importer's knowledge may also be used, but there will need to be sufficient evidence obtained prior that the goods meet rules of origin. This may involve the exporter providing a range of supporting documentation.
So if your goods meet origin requirements, you may need to provide evidence from the supplier of your goods to prove your product meets the requirements. This would be in the form of a supplier declaration to support your proof of origin. A supplier declaration is made out by the business supplying goods that are used in the final product that is then exported to provide evidence that your product meets rules of origin.
Now, there were 2 easements in place for traders relevant to rules of origin. Both will have ended by the 31st of December 2021. Firstly, importers that are moving goods from the EU to the UK had 175 days from when the goods were imported to submit a full customs declaration and pay any necessary tariffs. This includes declaring proof of origin. From the 1st of January 2022, businesses importing goods into the UK will need to submit a full customs declaration at the time of import. Secondly, for imports from the EU into the UK and from the UK into the EU, businesses would not have needed suppliers' declarations in place at the time of claiming preference until the 1st of January 2022. Importantly, if you are claiming a preferential tariff, you must be confident that your goods meet origin requirements. This easement provides additional time to source the required evidence. From the 1st of January 2022, however, any supplier declarations will need to be in place at the time of claiming preference. Now, customs authorities can also retrospectively verify trade movements that have been made over the past year where preference was claimed. So it is important to have suppliers' declarations ready and in place, as customs authorities can still go back and check that the preference claimed is now backed up by the full documentation, including supplier declarations.
So now we'll go through some examples of where a supplier declaration is required. So in this example, we have a spark ignition engine, which is classified under HS code 840731. The rule for engines is a maximum of 50% non-originating material as a percentage of the ex-works price. If all of the inputs to the engine are worth more than 50% of the ex-works value, you would need a supplier declaration to prove that no more than 50% is non-originating. So for example, if the total value of the materials was 55% of the ex-works price, you would need a supplier declaration to prove that the 5% is originating.
The next example where a supplier declaration would be required is wine made from fresh grapes, which is classified under HS code 220410. If restricted ingredients are used to make the product, you will require a supplier's declaration. If the restricted ingredients are imported from the EU using bilateral cumulation, you will instead need to use a statement on origin or importer's knowledge as the supporting evidence.
So we'll now go through some examples of where a supplier declaration is not needed. Take for instance sulfuric acid, which is classified under HS code 280700. This product has a choice of multiple different product-specific rules, either a change in tariff subheading rule, a specific processing rule, or a maximum non-originating materials rule. If you choose to use a specific processing rule and your production complies with this rule, you would not need a supplier declaration. However, if you choose to use the maximum non-originating material rule, you may need a supplier declaration to prove the origin of the inputs.
Another example where you would not need a supplier declaration is soybean flour from heading 120810. This product has a change in tariff heading rule, meaning that the ingredients used to produce the final product are classified in a different HS code from the final HS code of the product. Then it would be deemed an originating product and would therefore not need a supplier declaration to prove the origin of its inputs.
So now I'll go through supplier declarations and how it interacts with bilateral cumulation in the TCA. The TCA allows traders to use bilateral cumulation. This is where UK manufacturers can consider EU parts, materials, or ingredients as UK originating and vice versa, provided that the final goods are processed beyond insufficient production. For instance, if you import an EU originating car part or a chemical compound from the EU, you can count this as UK originating when used in the production of another product that is exported back to the EU. In this case, you would not need a supplier's declaration, as the EU parts should come with a proof of origin which can be used to support the proof of origin for the final product. Instead, the good would be declared to customs authorities via a statement on origin or importer's knowledge. So now I'll go through some examples of long-term supplier declarations and how they look like, and supplier declarations for non-originating materials. So if a supplier regularly provides you with the same parts, materials, or ingredients, you can use a long-term supplier declaration covering a long period for the same product. This slide shows an example of a long-term supplier declaration and what it looks like. There are also supplier declarations, both short and long-term, for parts, materials, or ingredients not originating from a trading partner. This may be used to account for segregation of non-originating and originating products sent together, for instance.
So, to recap, you only need a supplier declaration for the goods that influence the originating status of the final product. Imported goods that the product-specific rule allows you to use do not require a supplier declaration. So, for example, using material as part of a change in tariff heading rule. And finally, each consignment of goods can have a separate supplier declaration or a long-term supplier declaration can be used instead. This slide finally points to a number of links on gov.uk which are good for further reading on supplier declarations and related subjects. I hope this webinar has been useful for you, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch.